It's been just a little over a month since we initiated our Passover diary, which was a diary to take us through a time for God to sever us from the world system and connect us with Him in His covenant. We took that up through the Passover and just beyond, and Patrick Kawana shared some things for almost 2 weeks regarding the Babylon system and how to move out of that and move into what you could either call it God's kingdom system or His covenant system. His kingdom system is a covenant system. His covenant system is a kingdom system. But you can use whichever one or any other description that helps you understand that what this is about is moving with God in the way that He has established, not in the way that we want Him or need Him to move with us, but us moving with Him. So it becomes a very integral time for us. We're now 1 month into a 2-month period that takes us from Passover to Pentecost. Pentecost this year is at the end of this month of April 28, 29, and 30. We will be having an online gathering at that point, and many of you have already received, maybe, or will receive very soon, an announcement regarding that. However, in this time, this is a time known as the counting of the Omer. And that, without trying to understand all the ins and outs of what that was, it's a time to realize the new supply that God is putting in our hands for our next cycle of time. Okay, that's a kind of a weird way of saying it. But this is a time when God brings in and we gather together the things we'll need for the days ahead. Now, in particular for us, at this momentous time where He is calling us out of that connection with the Mammon Babylon world system and connecting with His covenant and with Him in covenant, that means that supply is going to be specifically and particularly important for us. At the heart of that supply is our interactive face-to-face relationship with Him. This is where God speaks to us. We receive what He says. We respond to Him. And we speak to Him. And He receives what we say. And He responds to us. And it's in that interactive connection that His covenant is brought to its fullness, its fulfillment. So this is a very important time. Now, at this time, I know we've talked many times in the past, and those of you who have known me over these past several years, you've heard me speak to you many times about listening to God and God speaking to us. And for some of you, it's created almost as much confusion as it has clarity for you. Because in your mind's eye, you've come to the point where you're thinking, I'm not sure I can. Is something wrong with me? Is something wrong with what He's saying? Is something wrong with God? Why can't I hear like I think I'm supposed to hear? And all of those kinds of questions come make your head throb. And if you're one of those people who finds yourself in that place, I want to, again, encourage you that over these next 3 weeks, as in the weeks that have led up to this point, this is for a time for you, and it's not the only time, but it's an important time for you to begin to come to terms with this before the Lord. Everyone has to come to terms with this. Everyone has moments or a moment or moments in time in which they have to face up to the fact of what kind of relationship God is offering them and what level of that relationship they're willing to enter into. You see, any of that involves a risk. It involves the unknown. It involves all kinds of elements that at first glance would seem real threatening. Yet, in the end, when we enter into this unknown, where we enter into and encounter God on His terms rather than our own, and by that I simply mean God begins to show us who He is apart from the ways that we have associated with God. Many times people only associate God with a church service or with a Bible reading or with a moment where their heads are bowed in prayer, thanking God for their food, or other moments of great tragedy where everyone calls on God. Those are moments that we tend to associate God with, but these aren't the moments He associates Himself with in relationship to us. He associates Himself with every part of our life, so that we move with Him throughout the day, day by day, so that He becomes all that we need, though He's not, He provides so much more with that. He's a God who wants to bring us in and experience things in fullness rather than with things always lacking or things falling short. So it is a risk. This is a time of great risk. But if you will contend for this in your relationship with God, if you will lay aside every idea, every thought that might come in and say, this can't happen for me. If you've either said that out loud, or if someone has said it to you, or whether you've thought it just in your own head, you have to expel that and say, Lord, I'm going to find out once and for all, forever, whether this is real for me on this level or not. Don't be satisfied with who you are or where you are. Though where you are may be a good place, there is even a greater realm for us to enter into. That's what I'm looking for my own self as I go through this time. I'm asking the Lord to show me some things about Him I've never known, and to show me some things about myself and about the world around me that I just haven't been in the place to be able to grasp and respond to. So it's an important time for us, all of us. I don't care where you are in your connection with God, whether you're at the beginning, whether you've been a believer like I have for 40-something years, or whether somewhere in between. Whether you've know a lot of things or know a little things. Regardless of any of that, wherever you are, this is a dynamic time for us, because it's a time in which God has changed everything. I know that now people are trying to get things back to where they were, but that's like trying to put the genie, once the genie's come out of the bottle, trying to get it back in the bottle. You can't do that. And things have changed now in a way that we're not familiar with. We don't know what our future is. I read a story yesterday in an international newspaper describing a man who's considered one of the richest men in the world, and who's also considered one of the smartest investors in the world. He is the head of one of the largest and most prosperous investment companies in the world. And they asked him, because he's very good at seeing the future in terms of economy and so forth, and they asked him about the future. He said he couldn't see it at all. He doesn't know what it's going to be, but our God does. And one of the things that I'm excited about for us, and why this Passover or this Pentecost that we're coming up to is so vital for us, is because God wants to bring us into a dimension with Him at this time, so that regardless of what's happening in the world system around us, regardless of what unfolds around us, we can still move with our God and experience the fullness of Him as He brings the earth and all that it contains into harmony and alignment with Him, and fills it with His glory. That's really what this is about. God wants us to be filled with the glory of God. Glory isn't just something you sing about or something you talk about. God wants us to experience it. In fact, the word fullness, you could use the word glory to describe fullness. And God's glory that He fills the earth with and wants to fill us with will cause every aspect of our life to be full of Him. That's where we're going during this time. Now, we're not going to continue on in the same kinds of diaries or journeys we've had over the last month. Over this next month, we're dealing with testimonies and questions about listening to God, because this is, we want everyone to be able to move forward in this, wherever you are, so that a month from now, when you look back, you'll say, I'm now at a place I've never been before. And so one of the things that I'm going to do to help with this, every once in a while I'll speak to you some things, but not too many. But I'm interviewing, in the beginning here, I'm doing a 4-part interview with Rick Weineke from Arad, Israel. He's in Arad, I'm in Texas. And some of you know Rick. Rick is an artist. He's not a theologian. He's not a religious person. He's not a political person. He's a sculptor. And a number of years ago, God moved in him and revealed to him a sculpture project that turned into what is now called the Fountain of Tears. We have a description of it in some of our other videos available in our Kingdom Circles of videos that you can check out. Then you can understand more about Fountain of Tears there. You can also, we have a link that you can go to actually watch his presentation of the Fountain of Tears. But I've asked Rick to come and let me interview him so that he could share with you how from the very beginning of his connection with God, which did not come early in life, it came as a young adult, but it didn't come as a child, it didn't come through religious backgrounds, it came through completely different means than a lot of people. But how during this time, from critical moments in his life, God cultivated in Rick the kind of connection with God where he interacts with God. Where God speaks to him, he listens, responds. He speaks to God, God listens and responds. And I want you to be able to hear this. And so what I'm going to do, I've already filmed the first 2 parts of the interview. In a few days, we'll do the last 2 parts. But over the next week and a half, I'll distribute these in sequence to you so that you can take time to watch and just listen. What I encourage you to do as you listen to this, look at, just think through your own experiences, your own chronology, and think of the ways that God has moved in you and with you, sometimes in ways you didn't understand, just like Rick. And begin to look how God has already prepared the way for you to hear him. And how he has already initiated speaking to you and moving with you. See, this isn't a time to come into something we have never had access to or completely don't know. It's time to come into a fuller expression of that. Not stay in the place where we've been, but to move forward. So I'm going to send you these interviews. At the same time, we're going to begin to address different questions about listening to God. Very soon, hopefully this week sometime, I'm going to bring together several people, and we're just episode by episode going to talk about different questions that people have, that we've heard, that we've asked ourselves about listening to God, and what to expect, what to think about it, what to ask for, what to and how to discern when it is that God is speaking to us. It's also a time where if you have questions, you can send them. You can send them to me if you like at alanfaubion@gmail.com, or to my WhatsApp. A number of you have my WhatsApp. You can send a question there, and you'll be able to, I'll get that question and we'll at some point address it. So I just wanted to let you know about this. So over these next 3 weeks, you'll find the Spirit of God taking the fears that you might have, the questions you might have, and he removes the fears, removes the questions, so all that will be left between you and your God is just that connection that you have with him. And that's what we want to get to, and that's where the Lord has us heading in the days ahead. So again, I bless you, and I look forward to hearing your stories. Just as I'm listening to Rick tell his story, I'm looking forward to listening to you tell your story to me of what God's done in you. Expect Him to do things that are unexpected. And anticipate that you're not going to recognize it, but God will make sure you won't miss it. So I bless you for that, and we'll move forward.